What if I told you that an Amish man, no car, no electricity, no insurance, no retirement account, quietly accumulated $200,000 in a bank account his bishop did not know existed, and that when it came out, it nearly cost him everything he had ever built? How Amish men handle money. In an Amish home, saving money is not just encouraged, it is considered a form of obedience. The average Amish adult saves close to 20% of monthly income, far above the national average. Debt is treated as a moral failure. Borrowing is a last resort, and paying a bill late is considered a form of theft. But saving quietly for yourself, without accountability to your community, is something else entirely. That is where the line gets complicated. The rule about wealth. The Ordnung, the unwritten but deeply enforced code of Amish life, is explicit on one point that most outsiders miss entirely. Personal power, personal status, and personal wealth accumulation are not simply discouraged. They are treated as threats to the community itself. The theological principle behind this is Gelassenheit, a German word meaning yieldedness, submission, letting go of the self for the good of others and for God. An Amish man is not supposed to build an empire, even a quiet one. He is supposed to produce, contribute, share, and remain humble before his bishop and his neighbors. Money that flows only inward, that builds one man's position without benefiting those around him, sits in direct violation of this principle. Whether or not a single rule has been technically broken, how he did it. It does not happen all at once. A man running a furniture business, a sawmill, or a construction crew earns real money, sometimes substantial money. The Amish are not poor by any measure. What made this situation different was not the income itself, but what he did with it. He opened an account at an English bank in a nearby town. He deposited cash from furniture sales, side jobs, and seasonal contracts quietly over years. He did not spend it. He did not invest it in any visible way. He did not build a larger barn or expand his land or start a second business. He simply let it accumulate. $200,000, building slowly in the dark, while his household ran on the same plain budget it always had. His family ate the same meals. His children wore the same clothes. Nothing on the surface suggested that anything had changed at all. What his wife knew. In an Amish household, financial decisions rest with the husband. This is not a source of conflict in most Amish marriages. It is simply the structure both husband and wife accepted when they joined the church as adults. The wife manages the household budget, the garden, the canning, the children's needs. The husband manages what comes in and what goes out beyond the front door. How much he earns from a furniture sale, how much a contract paid, where that money goes, these details do not always pass between a husband and wife in full. Some Amish women know every figure. Others trust entirely without asking. Whether this man's wife knew about the account, knew the full amount, or understood what her husband had been quietly building over those years is something only their marriage holds the answer to. What is certain is that when it came out, her position became one of the most difficult in the entire situation, caught between loyalty to her husband and accountability to the community she had lived inside her entire life. The accountability system. What most people do not understand about Amish communities is that financial privacy, as the English world understands it, does not fully exist. Twice every year, each Amish district holds what is called the Ordnungsgemeinde, a council meeting led by the bishop held before communion, in which every adult member of the church must affirm their peace with God and their unity with the community before the Lord's Supper can be taken. If any member is living outside the Ordnung in any area of forbidden technology, a business practice that raises questions, a lifestyle that does not match what the community knows of their income, this is the system designed to surface it. Deacons visit homes, neighbors talk, the bishop listens. An Amish community of 60 or 70 families is a place where almost nothing stays invisible for long, not because people are malicious, but because lives are lived so close together that the texture of a man's daily existence is observable to everyone around him. The moment it came out. Secrets in tight communities do not usually end with a dramatic confrontation. They unravel at the edges. A neighbor mentions a deposit slip seen on a counter during a visit. A bank teller in a nearby town mentions the account to someone who knows someone in the district. A purchase gets made: land, equipment, something substantial, and the numbers do not match what anyone understood this man's financial position to be. It could have been any of these things. What matters is that once one person knew, the information moved the way information always moves in a community where everyone's life is adjacent to everyone else's. Within days, the deacon had heard enough to bring it to the bishop. Within a week, the bishop had enough to act. The man did not confess voluntarily. The truth arrived before he chose to offer it. The bishop's response. The first step is never public. This is something the outside world consistently misunderstands about Amish church discipline. The community does not humiliate before it counsels. The bishop came to the man's home privately, accompanied by a minister. They sat at the kitchen table. The bishop asked questions quietly and directly. How long had the account existed? What was the money for? Had he intended to tell the church? The man answered. There was no shouting, no ultimatum delivered in anger. The ordnung process is measured and patient, rooted in the belief that a wayward member should be restored, not destroyed. But patient does not mean without consequence. The bishop made clear that the matter would need to come before the church, that the man would need to stand before his community and give an account of himself, that the money's existence was not the only issue the secrecy was. The years of silence before his bishop and his brothers in faith was what required confession most directly. What the community felt. The reaction inside the district was not simple, and anyone who imagines it was pure, righteous judgment has never lived in a community where everyone knows everyone else's face. There was judgment, yes, quiet and firm, from the older members who understood exactly what the ordnung said about private wealth accumulation. But there was also something harder to name. Some men felt the edge of envy not for the money itself, but for the freedom the money represented, the security it provided, the option it gave him that none of them had allowed themselves to want. Others felt confused. He had not spent it on anything worldly. He had not bought a car or a television or a piece of forbidden technology. He had simply saved. Was that sin? The bishop said yes, not the saving itself, but the concealment, the self-reliance taken too far, the quiet accumulation of individual power in a community built on shared dependence. The congregation sat with that answer and worked through it slowly. The confession, Amish confession before the congregation, is not a brief or private moment. The man stands at the front of the gathered church, his neighbors, his friends, the men he had worked beside for 20 years, the women who had fed his children at community meals. He does not offer a summary. He is expected to confess specifically the account, how long it existed, why he had not brought it forward. He is expected to express genuine remorse, not for being caught, but for the breach of trust with his community and with God. The congregation listens in silence. The bishop asks whether the members are willing to receive this man's confession and restore him to full fellowship. There is a process in most districts. A period of weeks follows before full reinstatement, during which the man remains in a kind of probationary standing. He attends church. He participates in community life. But he does not take communion until the leadership is satisfied that his repentance is genuine and his heart has turned back toward the community he withdrew from quietly for all those years. What happens after? Restoration in an Amish church is real. It is not a grudging tolerance. When the process is completed, the community is expected to treat the restored member as fully returned, without ongoing reference to what he confessed. That is the theological position. The human reality is more layered. Men who knew him will remember. Women who sat in that service will carry the knowledge quietly for years. Whether they allow it to change how they see him depends on the individual, the relationship, and the passage of time. As for the money itself, what an Amish man does with $200,000 he accumulated in secret after his church has addressed the secrecy is a question with no single answer. Some men in this position have contributed significantly to community needs building funds, hospital costs for families without coverage, land purchases for young couples who cannot afford a farm. Others have redirected the money into legitimate business expansion that the bishop has reviewed and approved. The account does not disappear. The money does not vanish. It simply exists now inside the open knowledge of the community rather than outside it. And that difference between the same dollars held in secret and the same dollars held in plain sight is, in the Amish understanding, the entire difference between sin and faithfulness. What his wife carried. Nobody asked her publicly. That is how the Amish handle the innocent party in a husband's failing quietly, carefully, with the unspoken understanding that she did not take the vow he broke. But not being asked publicly is not the same as not being affected. From the day it came out until the day the bishop declared him restored, this woman lived inside a situation she had not created and could not escape. She went to the same church services. She sat among the same women who now knew what her husband had kept hidden. She answered the door when the deacon came. She sat at the kitchen table during the bishop's visit and heard her husband explain himself to the two most important men in their community. Whatever she felt about the account, whether she had known, suspected, or been entirely kept in the dark, she processed it inside a marriage and a community that gave her almost no formal space to say so. Amish women do not speak during church discipline proceedings. They do not address the congregation. Their role in that moment is to sit, to listen, and to support the process with their presence. What happens between a husband and wife behind a closed door after the bishop leaves is something the community does not regulate and cannot see. Some women in this position feel relief. The secret is out, the weight is shared, the marriage can become honest again. Others feel a specific kind of betrayal that is hard to name, not because of the money itself, but because of the years of ordinary mornings and ordinary conversations that happened while something significant was being kept. Her name was never mentioned from the front of the church. Her forgiveness was never publicly sought. She carried her portion of this quietly, the way Amish women carry most things without an audience and without complaint. The deeper question, what this story actually reveals, has very little to do with $200,000. That number could have been 20,000 or 500,000, and the essential question would remain the same. The Amish community is built on a specific and demanding idea that no individual should accumulate enough private power, financial, social, or otherwise, to stand outside the need for his neighbors. The minute a man has enough saved that he no longer needs the community to help him through a crisis, he has changed his relationship to that community in a fundamental way. He is no longer fully dependent, and dependence on God, on each other, is not a weakness in Amish theology. It is the point. The average Amish adult saves diligently and is praised for it, but the savings are known, the bishop is aware, the deacon understands roughly how a family is positioned. Transparency is not just a courtesy, it is what keeps the community's mutual aid system honest. When one man steps outside that transparency, he does not just hide money. He quietly removes himself from the shared vulnerability that makes the community real. This is what the bishop was correcting. Not the savings, the separation. Every Amish man walks a line between self-sufficiency, which his faith demands, and self-reliance taken so far that he no longer needs anyone. This man walked too far in one direction, quietly, for years. What happened after was not punishment. It was the community pulling him back to the center where he had always belonged.